We are starting.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for starting. You are here on, with Healthy Schools Campaign, along with Steve Ashkin from the Green Cleaning Network, introducing David Gottfried. So we're really excited for you to join us. So before we get started, I just want to give a little bit of understanding of who we are, Healthy Schools Campaign. We are not-for-profit. We are based in Chicago, but we have a national focus. But we do a lot of work on school sustainability work. And for that reason, we are really excited to have the founder of the U.S. Green Building Council here with us today to talk about his history with the U.S. Green Building Council, as well as his future vision for sustaining for sustainability. But I'm just going to give a little bit of logistics on what we're doing today. We've got a 1-hour webinar. Just so you all know, you can be assured that there will be a recording available online. Anyone who registered will receive an email in the next few days with access to the recording, as well as a download of the slides. So feel free to ask, but they will be available. And finally, I believe we're going to have a quick short survey at the end. So if you can take a moment just to complete that survey, that would be tremendously helpful. Also, we are going to have a Q&A session. So if you have questions, in the final 10 or 15 minutes, probably more like 10 minutes, we're going to be available for questions, so you can get all your questions asked for David Gottfried at that point. We are taking questions through the question box. So on your lower right-hand side, there should be a little box. Type in your questions at any point. We will queue them up, and we will end up asking them of David Gottfried. That's the way that tends to work the best for us. So you ask your questions as they come along and as they happen. So please do not be shy. Now, let me introduce my friend, my colleague, Steve Ashkin from the Green Cleaning Network. I'm excited to be partnering with him on this to introduce David Gottfried. So, Steve, please begin. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Mark, and my thanks to all of you who have taken some time out of your day today to spend with us. This invitation went to members of the cleaning industry and through the Healthy Schools campaign to those of you working in schools, and I'm glad that we got such great turnout. And many of you have, over the years, participated in a number of the programs that we have done, which, at least when I've been involved with them, we've really focused on very technical issues. But today we have a really special program that I'm just really proud to be able to share with you and to present somebody that I think has been a real visionary and a real leader, and actually somebody who I consider to be my friend and who has actually had an enormous impact on my career, my belief that just as, frankly, ordinary people, not only can we make a difference sort of locally and within the context of where we work, but where we really can have the opportunity to really shape the future of the whole world. So let me share just a little bit about David, and we'll get on with this discussion. But as I think you're all aware, David Gottfried is the founder of the U.S. Green Building Council and also the founder of the World Green Building Council. And I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about either of those organizations because I think David is obviously the best qualified to talk about his experience with those organizations and how he's helped use them to make a huge impact. But in addition to his work on the USGBC and the World GBC, David is also now the CEO of Regenerative Ventures, which helps incubate green tech startup companies and advises leading global building industry organizations. And he's also has another organization called the Gottfried Institute, which specializes in finding and advocating for hormone cures. David is a global keynote speaker and the author of 3 influential books, Explosion Green, Greening My Life, and From Greed to Green. One of the things that I believe will speak a little bit, at least I hope you will, share a little bit is about his new book, Explosion Green, which is an Amazon #1 bestseller and has won 3 distinguished 2014 Indie Awards. Next slide, please. But the thing that I want all of you to really keep in mind when you're listening to David is to really appreciate the opportunity that we have to really make a change. And in some respects, that's what I really want you all to take away from all of this. This is not just a chance to hear, from a celebrity. This is a real person, and these are things that we can really do if we only believe so. Next slide, please. And the final thing that I just want all of you to keep in mind is we have a lot of people on the call today from schools and universities throughout the cleaning industry, people who really have the opportunity that together we really can change the world. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. As Mark mentioned, if you have questions, please take advantage of submitting them. They're in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. But use this as an opportunity to get to know David and to be inspired. And with that, let me turn this over to David. And again, pal, thank you very much for everything that you've done.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Mark. Just great to be here with everyone. And Steve and I go back maybe more than 20 years as we built the U.S. Green Building Council. And I remember meeting Steve, and he said, I'm going to green the cleaning industry. And his eyes were sparkling and bright. And here we are some 20 years later, and he's helped lead a whole movement in that field. And I'm sure Mark has been doing the same in healthy schools, and you as well. I'm excited to be here with you guys and share some thoughts and take you on a little journey of the green building movement around the world, some innovations, some trends, some economics, and some hope. And it'll be fun to then take your questions at the end. So how did we get here? I call it Explosion Green. And this is the title and cover of my latest memoir. I was so privileged to have Bill Clinton write the quote you can see in small font at the top. But there I was as a younger man some 20 plus years ago. And perhaps you were thinking like you were at a juncture in your careers. You had worked for 10 years or more, which I had as a real estate developer in Washington, D.C. And in the end of the go-go 80s, early 90s, the market crashed. I had bought a 40,000 square foot building as a young man, and it didn't quite go bust, but I ended up fighting and suing with my partners, and it ended my 10 years as a developer in D.C. At the end of that, I was looking for more hope and thinking more broadly that perhaps the economy and the building industry was more than a bubble. And I went back to my roots from Stanford University, where I studied solar engineering, and started to think about purpose and mission, a lot of things that I think you think about, and how through our career can me and you make a difference. So I packed up my car in D.C. and drove home to L.A., a long drive, arrived home, unpacked, and my father, who's a mentor to me, kind of the big voice in my head, even still, he gave me about a day before he said, son, what are you going to do now that you're not a developer in D.C.? And I said, Dad, I've been thinking a lot on this drive, and I want to have a career that's larger and bigger and of purpose. I love development in the building industry, but I really don't like how we build buildings. We don't care about energy efficiency and occupant health and indoor air quality and all those resource flows into the building. And the externalities like global warming or acid rain. And I'd like to start a nonprofit, Dad. I think I'll call it the U.S. Green Building Council. And he stopped and said, son, that's a good gimmick, but don't come home to me when you're starving. And I just kind of crashed. And perhaps you've had that talk with a mentor where you had fire in your belly and you got fire hosed. And that was back in '92. And I was given a free office from my friend Jeff Davis in San Francisco. I didn't move to LA where my folks were. And I sat in a chair for about 13 weeks in '92, rolling into January '93. And with Mike Italiano, our attorney that I brought in, and our new founding chairman, Rick Fedrizzi, we created the U.S. Green Building Council. So here we are 22 years later. Let's see how we did transform the world's largest industry, and let's share those lessons learned with you so that you too can transform your business, your industry, your career, your bank account, and your life. And obviously we want to avoid Earth looking like this, and that's what I've been working on for all these years. And I believe you in schools and cleaning and building and architecture, we can all come together to build a new world. Because value unused is indeed waste. And one of the greatest values we have is in our brain, our value to think and our value to come together and work holistically to create no waste. And no waste includes pollution and externalities, as well as using all the innovations and creativity that we have in our brain that don't always get into play. I call the bullseye of life V1, and that's the essence, is to maintain life here on Earth. But post-industrial revolution, we created, I think, the wrong economy, one that jeopardizes V1, and then V2 is second most important. Fresh air is life-sustaining, as well as potable water and air we can breathe and soil that grows, not dirt that we build over. Without V2, we lose V1. And those services and economies and agriculture that we build and government have to service V2, V1. And then the products and goods that you and I consume and you make is of lesser priority, and it has to respect the hierarchy that V1 is greater than V2, greater than V3. And then we can get to the life enhancers such as a snowboard or a fun iPad, but they shouldn't hurt our air, our soil, our water, and jeopardize life itself. And so we together are inventing a new economy with a new blueprint that's focused on life cycle value, not first cost, in new ways of collaborating and managing that are looking at that life cycle performance, which includes not only economics, but health today, health of building occupants, health of the people cleaning buildings and those students sitting inside so that they can have daylighting to boost their math scores. Then we collect the data, we ensure performance over time, and that we can then share our successes and lessons learned. And that's the new blueprint. Well, that dream, that 13 weeks in the San Francisco chair, coming together in April of 1993 at the AIA headquarters in DC, we launched our dream, a dream to not only create mission and purpose, but change how buildings are built in the U.S. And we came together as 60 founding members in 1993. We're now 15,000 organizations representing millions of employees. Maybe some of you are members. Perhaps some of you were founding members back in '93. And you too, like Steve, can tell the story. Fast forward all those years, we now have 11 billion square feet using LEED in actually 150 countries. We've grown since the slide, and 200,000 projects with 200,000 LEED accredited professionals and green associates. Almost all local and state and federal agencies are playing with LEED, and they're in the green building game. Many, including Paul Hawken, think we have been the fastest, most impactful nonprofit in the world. LEED started with what is called NC, new construction, which is a new building or substantial renovation. And that came out in about 2000 with significant funding from the Department of Energy, which helped us quite a bit get through our pilot. And later, we moved into existing buildings, which is our real growth area. Commercial interiors, just the inside. Core and shell, just the outside, which a spec developer wants, the CI a tenant can use. Later, we moved into homes and working with builders all over the U.S. Then we moved to the neighborhood, ND. And then some sectors of the building industry had trouble with NC applying it, and they wanted it more tailored. And we created application guides for healthcare, labs, schools, retail, etc. The growth in LEED, the growth in green building has been incredible. Its growth, you can see over the years here, are in number of projects and the value of projects. With a lot of the LEED projects on average are quite big, bigger than the average sized commercial building, which is about 15,000 feet. LEED buildings average, I believe, over 50,000 feet. In '98, on Earth Day, I had the privilege of being in Tokyo on the stage with translation. And I got goosebumps as a younger man and thought, well, we've got the U.S. with the Green Building Council, and now in '98 I'm welcoming here the Japan Green Building Council. And I thought it through and announced through translation that I am hereby now creating the World Green Building Council. And at that time we had two. And this slide says '98, but a few months ago we crossed 100 countries with GBCs all over the world, representing well more than half of the GDP of Earth. We have a secretariat in Toronto and world congresses where all the countries of GBCs get together, share knowledge, share best practice, and share how to be a catalyst for greening their buildings in their countries. Now, many of these countries have their own rating tools, and even more use LEED. And it's been fun to see the rated buildings of the world as I travel around, whether it's in Dubai, where I stood in a LEED Platinum building, or India, my hotel, and even in Beijing and Shenzhen, standing in LEED buildings, or Green Star buildings in Australia, and CASB buildings in Japan. And these are some of those labels. Last year, I got to give a keynote in Tel Aviv using my elementary Hebrew to speak to 800 Israeli green building experts and talk about their 5281 green building standard, which is quite significant. 15 years ago, I was in France talking to the folks at HQE, and we all learned from BREEAM out of England, which was the first rating tool in the world starting around '89. Germany, the EU, Australia, and even the state of California is requiring energy efficiency labeling for homes and buildings. And that will be ever present, I believe, all over the world. When we lease or buy buildings or houses, we want to know the energy bill. In time, I believe we'll want to know the air quality as well, and the degree of total VOCs off-gassing into the air, whether it's formaldehyde or CO, CO2. Government is really at the table with green building all over the world. At the USGBC, we have never grown without the assistance not only of DOE, but the White House, the Department of Commerce, GSA, the Post Office, the Pentagon. The green of the White House and Pentagon were early projects. But it was cities like Seattle and Austin who jumped in around 2000 and said, our city buildings will be LEED Silver. And in later years in cities like San Francisco and DC, they moved into the private sector with requirements and ordinances. USGBC, you can download from their website a list that's about 50 pages thick of governmental ordinances and incentives for green building in the U.S. Just astounding when you see that download of what's happened. States like Nevada or New York who have investment tax credits linked to green building. Projects like City Center that were $7 billion and went LEED Silver to get over $20 million tax credit in their real estate tax bill over a 10-year period. Cities like Arlington, Virginia, where you could build higher if you went LEED, or San Francisco, a faster building permit in your hand going to the front of the line for LEED Gold. In my book, Explosion Green, I sum up in the back, why us? How did we come together at the USGBC and the World GBC to change a $7 trillion industry? And it has these 14 ingredients that you can apply to your business, to your city, to your industry. And there are dozens of case studies of new councils coming together, whether it's in leasing or mortgage banking or automotive or agriculture. They're all creating green councils using our model, following what's written by Harvard Business School in their case study on the USGBC. At the backbone of everything we're doing, though, is economics. Our success came from putting economics and money in the center of the boardroom table. Other nonprofits didn't want to deal with economics, and they forgot that a nonprofit is out of business when it's out of money. So I encourage folks to study the startups in Silicon Valley. Our current CEO and first chairman, Rick Fedrizzi, came from United Technologies. He understood business and the need for recurring sources of revenue and leverage on your revenue, and not just getting in the line to ask for donations. McGraw-Hill has measured our economics for many years, and these slides come from them. Look at our uptick in the green market for residential and commercial. And Harvey Bernstein at McGraw-Hill projects we'll be at in 2016, we'll be at $200 billion in the U.S. green economy for green building. That's not a niche. That's not small. And I hope you're studying this and taking it home into what you're doing, to your field, to the growth of your business. When the economy crashed, as you see here, starting in 2008 and recovering around 2012, green held steady and was growing in the non-residential market. And the same holds true in residential. So it was a hedge against the down economy, a hedge for your sales in your business, a hedge for the growth in your school or student body or your academic budget. And that same story can be seen as green's growing in office starts each year. and retail from 28% to 35%, in hotel starts, in healthcare, and in educational starts for those academic buildings going green. And hopefully your school, your college, your university is using a green building program. Hopefully you're using LEED or something equivalent, and demanding that not only for your new buildings but for your existing buildings using LEED EB, because you're wasting money and energy in water, and the health and productivity of those students should be boosted. Here's a focus in the home field of those builders adopting more green in their strategic plans as we go towards 100% of the market. This was a little pilot project for myself and my family a few years back. We bought a 1915 Craftsman, which is gorgeous with the beautiful wood you see on the right side, and we greened it. And when we finished, we were the highest rated platinum home in the world. We became a target for other homes, including new ones. About a year later, I received an email from someone in Oregon who was very proud to tell me that he had beat my standard points. And my male ego at first was hurt, and then my pride as a father of the green movement allowed a huge pleasure and chills, because that's what it's all about, that we each pioneer, we share our data and knowledge, and we push others to beat us. And when we learn about that, we celebrate their success. But then, of course, we go back at it and try to beat them. And this home was gorgeous. It ended up in 20 magazines with a 6-page spread in Metropolitan Home, and a movie with Discovery Channel, and Steve Thomas from This Old House standing on the roof with me, putting up solar. But it shows that you can green anything. These are new dual-pane windows we popped into the old, beautiful wood. We drilled little holes in these walls and blew in cellulose. We put an insulation under the crawl space. Behind that black couch is a radiator panel, and we had solar hot water on the roof providing the heat for that panel. And we had 11 control systems in this little house. And it's quite sweet, quite comfortable, and huge green. So the market is waking up also in their corporate commitment to green. We're seeing new titles like Chief Sustainability Officer at major and medium-sized corporations. We're seeing them in the C-suite, where green is becoming part of their strategic plan, and they're all reporting and collecting data, and the shareholders are celebrating the profit and growth. And you can see it here in commercial and retrofits and institutional construction. Harvey Bernstein McGraw-Hill puts out the Green Outlook. You can Google this and get it for free. But I love economics as a developer, and CoStar has had a study of about 30,000 buildings showing an average rental increase in green building of 6.2%. These buildings are keeping their occupants there longer, so the vacancy is lower. And the operating cost has gone down for energy, water, maintenance, and materials. When you pull all that together, you get a better net operating income and a higher building value when you sell the building, or the bank assesses it for the loan, or you're raising money from your investor, and you can show them almost a 10% increase on their return on investment. That's hardcore economics. Adobe is one of my favorite case studies. It's here in the Bay Area. They took 3 headquarter San Jose buildings, and these are their incredible results. 37% energy savings, high water savings, enormous waste diversion. What I like about their case study is that they calculated their internal rate of return, and it was over 100%. A lot of us are getting about 1% in our bank accounts. Who wouldn't want to have 121 times that money? They also did get quite significant utility rebates. But what's significant beyond the return, and that they're a major publicly listed tech firm, is they track their 64 energy improvement projects. You can see on the bottom there. They invested $1,360,000, netted out the rebates, and then calculated the individual line item rate of return. That's the way to do this, and that's astounding. When they started to renovate these 3 buildings, they were already a high Energy Star score, over 90, and they were able to elevate them all to 100 and receive LEED Platinum as well. In your fields of education and healthy schools and green cleaning, this slide is very important. The health and productivity of those building occupants and the workers that you employ in your schools and your cleaning companies. And there's just incredible data for productivity and health by letting in more daylighting, by having more individual control, by using different materials that are non-toxic and not having all those volatile organic compounds, getting the HEPA filter vacuums, and different methods of running the buildings can boost and have impacts not just on test scores for kids, but also those patients in the hospitals and those workers in the buildings. A new health standard is coming out, and I encourage you to study it further, the WELL building standard, and it's going quite broad with mind, comfort, fitness, nourishment, getting points in their system. So take a look at it. It's brand new, and they're in the pilot stage. We like to see growth in jobs, especially during the down economy. And green is a place for job employment. Obama knows that. He invested in the down economy, and those firms that went hard at green building, they were adding people in the down economy and growing their top line and their bottom line. And there are many more millions and billions that can be made by changing all the toilets in buildings, first to dual flush, where a number 1 is under 1 gallon per flush, and a number 2 is at 1 gallon, maybe 0.5 and 1. All the homes should have those. And then if you want to go deeper, how about composting toilets? How about taking out the pavement that does not allow water to go through? It's not porous. And instead that water goes into the street to be treated with enormous energy and then sent to the bay. If we ripped out all that pavement, we can employ millions of people, put in porous pavement, and recharge our aquifers. And the water department should give you rebates for that. Right there with those 2 ideas, we just hired millions of people. We can have more jobs, better career advancement, job security, higher salaries, and I like green bonuses. It's all about risk mitigation for regulatory risk, market, physical, these hurricanes and earthquakes, and green building ties into all of that with the floods as well. Back to the money, the average studies that Great Katz did of green buildings in the early days showed a cost increase for all the various LEED levels of only 2%, and at the certified LEED level, less than 1%, and platinum, the highest, 6.8. But these costs are coming down as we gain experience, as you and your design teams, the contractors, the building operators do more and more LEED projects or Energy Star. They have knowledge, and that knowledge drives the cost down. We saw this with the city of Seattle. where they first started in 2000 that all buildings would be green, that the city had, that they were constructing and operating for libraries and public safety facilities and fire stations. And after they had done about 4 buildings, moving towards 12, their cost came from a 4% increase down towards 0. And many of us are seeing this. I'm a tech geek, being here in the Bay Area. I also run Regenerative Ventures and have stock in 15 startup companies. One of these is View Glass. I also play with their competitor a bit named Sage. And this is a $1 trillion startup product that you're starting to see in buildings because they each have plants up and they're delivering. But they're going into our dual pane glass and thinking that glazing can be intelligent and use computer and software technology to go from clear to dark. It's not that huge of a thought that glass can do that. We've seen that in our sunglasses. Perhaps you've even seen it in your window glass in your car. And that has an enormous impact by letting in the light or controlling the light to the amount of visible light you want, but keeping the heat gain out. And that allows us to design better buildings and buildings that understand where the sun is, particularly the western sun. And then our lighting systems and air conditioning systems can be smaller in first cost design and economics because of these emerging new windows. Another thing to look at are our plug loads. In a green building, the HVAC is super efficient. And you see from 1970 to 2012, our HVAC stayed almost consistent overall. But then we started to, if you look over to 2020, once you have a green building that the HVAC is super efficient, then you work on the lighting, and that's what we're doing from 2012 to 2020. You get that down as the second largest load historically to HVAC. But what emerges in the 2020 projection as the highest energy load are all the things we plug into the walls. It's usually HVAC historically, then it was lighting, and then once HVAC and lighting came down, the plug loads. And all of us know with cloud computing that the electric loads are going up quite a bit. And all of the big computer companies are having to look at their energy as well. I think we're growing about 12% a year in the data center energy. It's only about 1 to 2% of total, but with that 12% growth a year, it's flip-flopping. So we have to look at all the things we're plugging in and the energy load of those. And with N-Metric, one company I'm playing with, but there are others, we're starting to understand the electronic draw of each outlet that buzzes that signature to a cloud, and from the cloud you can control every outlet. So if we're at a blackout period of peak demand, we can turn off our laptops and get a return on investment off that battery. We can turn off our EVs. And maybe in time our EVs, and we'll use those batteries as a demand-side management tool during peak power. And so we're getting into the plug loads. Another fun firm I play with is called Project Frog, and they are working in the field. It looks like a prefab building, but it's actually not. It's a kit of parts that the architect owner can put together in these suggested templates. There's very little waste in what they're making, and when you put it together, it's green in manufacturing, it's green in energy, water, and operations. And we'll see a lot in prefab elements as well. Working with Blue Planet and Calera, who are sequestering CO2 from coal plants and power plants into concrete. And it's doing what the forests are doing, just staggering and incredible, that potential that we could actually directly pipe CO2 into an aggregate that goes into our cement. You guys are probably familiar with EPDs and HPDs, and if you're not, please study them. In terms of health, the HPDs are looking at all the toxic elements and the labeling and apples-to-apples comparison in a similar product such as carpet. It allows you to help in the specifications. The Living Building Challenge is worth looking at. It's a separate rating tool that one of our chapters of USGBC, the Cascadia chapter, invented, and it's pushing beyond platinum to net zero energy, net zero water, and net zero waste. They also have 11 products on their red list that a living building cannot have in its building. It's worth looking at. This is a trend of the future, and firms like Facebook and Google are using that standard. For my Regenerative network, which is a coalition of building manufacturers, I handpick one in every area of the building, and we get together 3 times a year. But we had to figure out, how do we pick that carpet company or that drywall firm? So we invented a regenerative balance sheet of 270 line items in these 4 areas. And an analyst who's been trained by us could look at your publicly reported information and rate you in less than 4 hours in these 4 areas and give you a regenerative balance sheet score. And then in our network, we can take the best performers in given areas in the 270 line items and share best practice. And that's the essence of a network, as well as helping build your business. To me, to any systems engineer, it's about continuous improvement. And where we're playing today mostly is just in number 1, in limiting the damage. The Living Building Challenge is moving up to neutral in energy, water, and waste, but Earth demands restoration and then regeneration. I'm really pleased to share with you my newest creation, which is going to air digitally all over the world in a couple weeks, the week of September 15th through 19th. And this is free. You can go to explosiongreen.com and sign up for free to hear 40 Green Guru interviews that I personally conducted. The lineup is just awesome. Here's, in this photo, Mark Ruffalo, who's the amazing Hulk, who helped green the state of New York, getting rid of fracking. Alongside him is Amory Lovins and Niels Koch and Rick Federici, Hunter Lovins. We have Art Gensler, the biggest architect in the world, and all the trendsetters I could get my hands on, I interviewed. And you'll hear me ask them basically 3 questions. What disruptive innovation are you working on now that gives you the most hope that we can see quantum leaps in performance? And the answers to those 40 interviews is worthy of a book itself on the future trends in the built environment and the sustainability movement. Then I ask them, what gives you the most inspiration in what you're working on? And lastly, at the end of the day, what gives you the most hope of everything you're seeing in your incredible view of Earth as a guru? If you can make the 15th through 19th, we have 8 interviews a day. You have 24 hours to watch those 8 from the time they show. If you can't make the 24 hours, they do go away. But if you want to purchase all 40 for perpetual access, they're about $2.50 each. You can buy it at 99 bucks. I encourage you to sign up at explosiongreen.com. I believe this is my best work because I'm gathering people that are the smartest on earth that I could get my hands on and ask them these penetrating questions and sharing it with you. And this gives me hope, and I'm so excited to share it with the world. So as we wrap up here, I want to turn inside of you and me and those green homes and buildings and ask who's in the building. And we could be in a new Tesla driving to our LEED Platinum net zero home, but if what we put in our mouth, of what we drink, if we're sitting all day long and our brain and mentality is toxic, then I don't believe sitting in the Tesla driving to the LEED Platinum net zero home is good enough. So I encourage you, as I push myself, and our hormone business is focused on this. We have a detox that's launching actually today, and I have to go on that and want to go on that with my wife, where we'll get rid of sugar, we'll get rid of gluten for 30 days, we'll get rid of the alcohol and the caffeine, we'll move our bodies daily, we'll stretch daily, we'll learn to meditate and breathe. If we do all that, our productivity and performance would be much higher than just sitting in a green building. So I encourage you to share in my story, to take the baton that I talked about, that I started when I drove from DC back to San Francisco and had that dream of transforming our industry. This has been an incredible ride and journey, but it's your turn too. And many of you, like Steve, have been helping in this story for 20 years. But we encourage and give you the baton to climb up the mountain, to invent in your business, invent in your home, invent in your own body, invent in your industry, the equivalent of what we did. And don't let anyone fire hose you. Have that piss and vinegar to sit in a chair for 13 days. And when you hear a no and you want it to be a yes, well, turn it around, because the earth needs it, we need it, the children need it, and you'll make a hell of a lot more money. So just great to be here with you guys and share some thoughts, to go up the mountain together and celebrate on the top through transformation and regeneration.
Great, thank you so much. I think we're going to just move right into questions from the audience, since we already have a lot of questions that have come in. We've got about 10 minutes to answer questions, so if there are any questions that you have in your own mind, please type them into the box, and we'll do our best to get to them. Before I do, Steve, would you like to have any final wrap-ups, or would you like to start off with questions of your own?
Well, thank you, Mark. But really, David, thank you very much for spending time with our audience. And what I'd really rather do is just get to the questions that have been submitted. So thank you for all of you who have been on the phone. And David, again, thank you very much for everything that you've done. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do in the next 20 years.
Okay. Well, let's get started then. So first of all, David, we have a question. Do you have any information on the new Apple campus? I understand that it's going to have a net zero impact. Do you have any information that you could share about that project?
Yeah, they've kept it very tight, and their team all signed NDAs. So it is hard to get information except what's publicly written. I, too, have heard about the net zero. I know they're looking at the health quite a bit, perhaps using the Living Building Challenge health guidelines. I don't know that they'll do the Living Building Challenge certification. I know it's huge. It's circular. I believe it's about 2 million square feet, and they're very advanced in the glazing and precast methods. That's about all I can share at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Thank you. And next question, David, do you see a particular area where you think there's the greatest opportunity for sustainability and or energy savings that you want to focus on?
Sure. I'm an engineer, and we always like to start with the envelope of the structure first, whether it's a home or the new Apple campus. We start with where's the sun, where's the natural ventilation opportunity, and you position the home or the building correctly if it's new. If it's not new, you still need to follow the sun and make the glazing as efficient as possible. And now we saw smart glazing, super insulate the walls, the floor, the roof, put a white roof on it because of the heat gain, and then shade it appropriately. I almost never see adequate shading on anything, any building or home, especially in the western sun in the summer. I never see an overhang that adequately keeps the sun out of the structure. So if you've done all that, now your heat gain is minimized. Then you move into the systems, so super efficient mechanical lighting systems, and then your plug loads we talked about. If you have an older leaky home like I did in that photo, the best return on investment for a homeowner that's got an older home is to hire someone who does an air infiltration assessment. In one day, they put an air blower test on one door. They blow air throughout the house. They measure where all the losses are. They run around like crazy with caulking and foam spray and weather stripping and sealing. And at the end of the day, in the home you saw pictured, the Craftsman from 1915, at the end of the day, the air infiltration loss was down 50%. So we were losing half of the conditioned air from previous to that one day. The payback period on the $600 cost was 3 months in terms of lower energy bills. So that is just incredible. Everyone should do it. Another thing I did in a different older home where I couldn't change out the windows because it was too expensive was I went to the hardware store and they had this film that looked like saran wrap, and I put it over the windows with tape, and especially the leaky ones, and then you put a hair blower dryer on it, and it makes it into a vacuum. So for like 30 bucks, I made my windows into dual pane windows. It works so well in terms of getting rid of the leaks that I kept it on a lot of the windows for 3 years.
Okay. All right, great. So David, in your time since founding the U.S. Green Building Council, what has been, do you have a single change in the industry that has been most fascinating or most shocking to you?
Well, since starting in '92, it's shocking to me to just share those slides with you. To see that slope of that chart from McGraw-Hill moving towards 200 billion in the U.S. in 2016, or that slide with 200,000 LEED accredited professionals, or 150 countries using LEED, and the 100 countries with GBC. So that is just unbelievable. No one ever projected that. No one believed that. We just had the piss and vinegar to climb that mountain. I similarly love the advent of new technologies and celebrating those. I've showed you a few. I love that our model moved into other industries like agriculture and green hotels and green schools. The green school movement is enormous, both in terms of the physical buildings and the curriculum. On the flip side, I still see that we haven't hit most buildings. We might have 300,000 commercial buildings using Energy Star and LEED, but in the U.S. alone, there are almost 5 million commercial buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 4.2 million who we're not playing with.
Yeah.
And homes even more. So as much as I'm happy, I love to celebrate, I see that we're barely moving the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to move that ship fast because we're over 400 particles per million of CO2, and the scientists tell us 350 is the steady state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, let's see. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to ask a question for Steve. Steve, there's a question that asks, what is the best tool or way to measure the level of a comprehensive green cleaning program? How would you evaluate, assess a green cleaning program, Steve?
Well, that's a great question, and frankly, I would really have to think about that a little bit. You know, in many respects, we always talk about the LEED rating system as the roadmap to green cleaning, and in it, it talks about the use of chemicals, the use of paper products, the use of cleaning equipment, purchase of plastic liners, training, things that the custodial force can do to reduce energy and water consumption. So while we haven't had a way to sort of add all of these things up to come up with a specific score, there definitely is using a tool like LEED, and forgive me for not immediately mentioning the Healthy Schools Campaign's Quick and Easy Guide to Green Cleaning in Schools, or to use the Green Cleaning Awards for Schools and Universities program. But the bottom line is, you know, that old saying from Peter Drucker that we can't manage what we don't measure.
Mm-hmm.
In each of the various categories, we can just start determining whether or not we're actually being conscious about what we're buying in each of those product categories, to start measuring it, tracking it, and then improving it. And as we gain more information, perhaps we'll come up with a better scorecard or way to do it. But as I think everyone knows, you know, this really is, you know, a long journey. Where they say sustainability is a, you know, it's not a single event, but it really is a lifelong journey that we need everyone to participate on and just to get going. So I'm sorry if I don't have a very clear and simple answer to it, but certainly there's a number of tools out there that can help you.
So I think we're going to ask our last question because it's almost the end of our hour. But this question, I think both Dave and Steve will have a lot to say about it. When are you going to start a U.S. Green Products Council to encourage change in building materials, finishes, and furnishes that surround us daily?
So Steve can jump in with me. I believe, well, we're not starting it, but I believe that group already launched. Mm-hmm. And they had an emphasis from the US EPA. I don't know the exact name, but it's something like the Green or Sustainable Products Leadership Council. Mm-hmm. I think if you Google that, it will come up. I believe the chair is a client of mine at Office Depot, Yalnız Siddiqui, and you should be able to find more about that. Is that the group for green products? I'm sure there are others. That's a credible group with good people, with interested in guidelines and third-party consensus. Steve, you might have more to add, or maybe you're part of that group.
Well, thank you, David. And actually, I am part of the group, the Sustainable Products Leadership Council. You know, again, everyone is really following the model of the USGBC and what it's accomplished with LEED. And so trying to figure out how to make it easy for purchasers to be able to identify what's a green product, especially as we start moving into the consumer space. So whether the Sustainable Products Leadership Council or frankly just using third-party certifications from Green Seal and UL, EcoLogo, and EPA Design for the Environment program will sort of help us get there. But as David mentioned, Sustainable Products Leadership Council is a new emerging organization, and hopefully they'll help us But even without that, I really want to encourage everyone, whether it's in your own personal life or in your schools or your businesses, to at least ask the right questions and simply be aware that as a purchaser, as a consumer, you have a right to ask what's in the products that you buy, and to know that, you know, we're really smart people. I mean, human beings are extraordinarily innovative and creative. And if we make health and environmental issues a priority, in addition to obviously thinking about things like price and performance, but that we really can change our products, we can change the environment, and we can change to a greater future through the things that we buy, and really using the marketplace to help us get there. So please ask those questions and don't settle for anything less.
Great. I'd just like to say we are out of time right now, so I would like to say thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for helping organize and think about this webinar. David, thank you for your time and for sharing your thoughts with us. And for everyone who's participated and have taken time out of their busy afternoons, we appreciate you taking the time to listen and learn with us. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And again, let people know that the webinar recordings will be available, so share the links as they get sent out next week. Thank you so much, and take care. Bye-bye.